Welcome back to the lunch table, Food for Thought. I'm Nico Blitz. Make sure you hit that subscribe button right down there. We're also on Apple Podcast, SoundCloud, YouTube if you want to see my face for a good hour. Also, on Spotify, we have this dope-ass playlist where I'll be sharing a whole bunch of music from everybody being featured on this podcast. My next guest, though, not a musician, but a huge part in radio. Her grandfather actually started the only black-owned radio station in Rochester, New York.
Yep.
104 WDKX, to be exact. She goes by the name of Andria Langston, or Mitochondria.
Powerhouse of the cell. Nobody actually knows what that means. Somebody was like, is that a disease?
You know, what's funny was that me and Ange were just like, yo, like, what exactly is mitochondria again? That was me, but you didn't know either. She didn't.
People remember, like, if you remember anything from, like, 7th grade science, that's, like, the one thing you know, like, is from Spanish class, ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? And the mitochondria is a powerhouse of the cell. Those are, like, the only two things I remember from school. Literally. But, yeah, that's...
I thought it was, like, a good ring. Because I was like, okay, I already know your name, and it's just like, it just fits perfectly.
Exactly, and it's the only word in the English language that rhymes with my name. That and hypochondria, which I also am, so.
What's hypochondria?
Like when you are like afraid that you have diseases that you don't have.
Oh, so when you're paranoid. Oh, yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
You know, like when you go on WebMD and you're like, oh, my ear hurts. I have cancer. That's me also.
Oh, God. I didn't even know that was an actual thing. I didn't even know that was
a term.
Yeah, when you're hypochondriac.
Yeah, that's me.
Crazy. Okay, well, I'm a shout out to all the hypochondriacs out there, especially during the wintertime. You feel me? But Andria, man, I think the first time I met you was during, I want to say like an event at like Staples. We were doing something for iHeart.
Yeah, we worked at iHeart when I was in grad school out here. That was a long time ago, like 3 or 4 years ago.
That was about like 3 years ago.
Sheesh.
But you've been in radio forever, huh?
My entire life I've been in radio. So, like you said, my grandfather started our radio station in 1974. Wow. It was a long process. He began the process in 1968, where he had to go down to the FCC and get all the paperwork to actually get 103.9. And after that long battle, we finally went on air in 1974, and we've been going 24/7 ever since. My dad started working at the station when he was about like 19, and started running it on his own when I was like in college. Mm-hmm. But I started working at the station when I was... Child labor laws definitely should be
they should be applied in Rochester,
right? Because my dad had me learning to run the boards at 5 years old.
Wow, that's crazy.
I was doing commercials. I was editing by second, third grade, and then I had my own show at 16 until 19. Started doing sales at 17.
You're doing everything. You did everything at 5 years old that a lot of college graduates do, like when they're like 22, 23.
Right, and I try to catch myself too sometimes because like I'll hear like my friends that are in radio, they're like, oh, like running the boards, like they have me doing all this work, and I'm sitting there like, okay, sure. Okay. Like I had oh my gosh, my senior year prom, someone didn't show up to like run the boards, so I literally was in my full prom dress, like running the boards, like doing everything because we had a remote. So a remote is like a live broadcast from a different location outside of the station, for those that are listening. So we had like our air personality go down and do the remote broadcast from the club, but somebody had to run the boards. So there I was in my prom dress.
So you're over here. You were like already at prom at that time.
Yeah. Well, luckily, I mean, I also feel like low-key my dad didn't want me to like go do things after prom.
He's like, hey, you know, you have the day off, but let's just say you're sick.
Right, literally. And so it was probably around like, 10, 11 o'clock. I had to go to the station. I worked until about 2 in the morning, and that was my prom night.
You know, that's dedication.
Hey, when your family owns a business and when your parents are entrepreneurs, everyone works nonstop. Mm-hmm. There's no such thing as a day off.
Now, even though you started off at like 5 years old, did you like truly want to be in radio?
I just feel like I was born as a radio piglet. That's what, like, when it's in your blood, that's just my second nature. But my passion is acting. And so even though I was working with my dad after work, or even my mom, she owns her own business too. She does construction. So I know how to do like plumbing and drywalling and carpeting and painting. So I would be working with my parents, but then I would have to go to rehearsal because I would be in every theatrical production plus track practice. So like,
Jesus Christ, dude.
I don't know how to like how to just sit down. So I said I'm a powerhouse. Like I know like there's things that you have to do in life, and I know how important radio is to not only my community, but like on a larger scale too. So I know like that's my duty, but I know what my passion is. So I try to, balance what, God has put me in the place of, and then also balance the talents that he's given me as well.
So even then, like, how did you manage to balance being a growing teenager in Rochester, trying to be an actress, and also helping run your grandfather's radio station all at the same time, and plumbing?
Dude, I don't really even know, like, how I even found hours in the day. Like, when I look back at, like, when I was in high school, I was in AP classes, I was in theater, I was in track, I was working 2 jobs with my parents. I just think, like, when you put your mind to things, you can just, like, grind it out. You know what I mean? If you look for excuses, you'll always find them, and then you'll always find a reason not to do something. But when I look back at like how hard like everyone in my family worked, like from my grandfather, he grew up in like a small, like, oh God, we went to where he grew up. Like, no offense if anyone listening is from Dawson, Georgia, but it was it was bad. It was very just run down. It was just a dirt road. So if I can see my grandfather going from that to owning a radio station, like I literally have no excuse to get anything done.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it's kind of in your blood between your grandfather, your dad, and your mom all having like their own independent businesses. Like you're kind of like the, I guess, golden child for it, because you have all these bloodstreams being like, yeah, I'm independent. Yeah, the daughter's going to be like extremely independent and get her shit done.
It puts a lot of like pressure on you too, because I'm an only child. And from my dad's side, I'm only grandchild. So it's like, well, you better not. Can I cuss? Am I allowed to cuss on here?
Go ahead.
You better not fuck up. So that's, and even like, so like Ange and I are like really big into like being from Rochester. We're like very proud of our roots. And even like on my mom's side of the family, I don't even know if I told you this, but like my grandfather on my mom's side of the family, they say that like Rochester is from like his imagination, because he was an architect, one of the first Black architects like in America. And like pretty much any building in Rochester built before 1968 was like my grandfather's buildings, like all the houses in Brighton, Pittsford, Penfield, the Monroe County Hospital, even like the Lexington Hotel in New York City. Like he did all this stuff. So it's like,
wow. Shout out to Grandpa one time, man.
So it's like for me, my roots are so like they're just so rooted in Rochester, and I just feel like I've had so many admirable people to look up to. So it's like, why not just try to be the best you can be?
So why do you think like Rochester doesn't get the recognition they deserve amongst, I mean, everything? I think Ange said there was something part of Rochester that was made there.
Kodak,
the button,
Xerox,
Kodak, yeah,
everything.
All that, everything.
Like so many things are from. Wait, the button was invented in Rochester?
There was the button factory.
Yeah, like button factories and all that.
I believe it. There were so many things in Rochester. Even like French's Mustard had a factory, and Champion was in Rochester.
Champion was in
Honey, yes, when it was like still corny though, but it was still there.
Hey, but before it was in Urban Outfitters and all that.
Bosch and Lomb was started in Rochester. So Rochester really was a mega center in like the 60s and 70s. But I think what happened was, I mean, you had people that were making like $60,000, $70,000 without even a high school education working at Kodak. You know, there were janitors making crazy money. And what happened when Kodak went under, it kind of just took the whole city down with it. And our crime rates went up, and our education plummeted. And it really had a negative effect on Rochester, and people just forgot about us, you know? But there's still so many, like, beautiful things about Rochester, and the people that come out of Rochester, like Taye Diggs, Keisha Sharp, Philip Seymour Hoffman. There's so many, like, what I think, even though, like, when Rochester went through, like, that really, well, it's still kind of going through that dark time, it kind of breeds a lot of creative, beautiful minds. And when there's lack of resources, it allows people to be more creative with the lack thereof.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean.
feel you.
And so like that's why you see like all these like really beautiful minds coming out of Rochester, and like that's my whole goal and mission is to like showcase like all the beautiful things that Rochester has to offer. Even just starting with like my family's radio station, like to me it's a huge deal that it like we even still exist.
Well, it's like what, 25
years?
No, you said 60.
Oh, so we've been in business. It's our 45th anniversary this year.
45th.
Yeah.
My math is all fucked
It's
up.
okay. I can't do math either, so.
45 years.
Yeah. So we went on air in 74. So we're celebrating 45 years. And like for me, I feel like that's a huge accomplishment. Just for like one family to have a business.
Well, shit, nowadays businesses don't even last 2 years.
Honey.
45?
They really don't. They really don't. And even like having the thought process. So like a lot of the people that work at the station I've known my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that type of thought process. Like in our generation, we hop from job to job every 2 to 3 years.
And WDKX, is it also just independently owned, or is it owned by? Oh wow, that's crazy. No big companies came in.
No, honey, no. They tried to come in, but the thing is, the whole thing with my grandfather, you have to remember, 68. That's the riots, the time of the riots when Black people were being just beaten and hosed down, and the racism in Rochester. We always call Rochester like the most northern state because the racism in Rochester is like disgusting, like even to this day. So the whole mission of DKX is to give a voice to the unheard. So often, even though there's like a very large like Hispanic and Black population, we are just like brushed to the side, and people don't see much value in our communities. And the whole purpose of DKX is to showcase like all the beautiful things that our people are doing, you know? So like if there are, like we just put together Distinguished Gentlemen, it's to like encourage these young men in Rochester to like to see that there are other options instead of just becoming like a basketball player or a rapper.
Yeah,
it's like, well, here's a man that owns a business. Here's a doctor. Here's a dentist. Like these are also options that you can become one day, and like showing these kids that, you know, window of opportunity, and like encouraging kids that are just have all this like light and ambition in them to like fuel that and like push it to more, what's the word, like I can't think of the word.
Mitochondria.
but fueling that like to a more positive area, you know, instead of just focusing on the negative, like really just painting a more positive picture.
I think I saw a video the other day, and it was based out of like Newark, like in New York. And there was a school who actually conducts an after-school program in which they allow kids to come in, create music, create like clothing and all that. And I was like, yo, that's really smart, because they're just not like in the streets.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the number one thing that keeps kids like in the streets is the fact that there aren't those places of opportunity to actually grow and nurture skills that they want to enhance.
Exactly. And that's like our whole thing. Like, so even though we're a radio station, I understand like you're just supposed to play music and get your advertisements on, but I think that because we're independently owned, we have such an advantage over the conglomerates like Cumulus and iHeart and Entercom, where our relationship with the community is what keeps us in business. That's the only reason why, for me in particular, why I think it's important that DKX stays alive. Because we have the opportunity to go into these schools where I can talk to kids directly and say like, hey, like I went and got my undergrad, I got my master's, and I'm working. And kids need to see that. Kids need to feel and touch and hear and understand what that means. Yeah. We've created programs in place, like the Step Jam is like one of my favorite events. That's a show that I produce, and because our education rates dropped so dramatically, we had like 3% African American males graduating from the city school district, and 5% Hispanic males. That's disgusting. So the only thing I could do is like, the only thing we could think of is like, how do you encourage kids to go to school? How do you encourage them to be engaged and want to do better and want to learn? We created a event called Step Jam where you have to have over 89% attendance rate in school. You have to have a certain GPA to get a free ticket to go. And we've had artists like Jacquees come, we've had Trevor Jackson come, we've had Ray Shremmerd come, we've had all these like really great artists, but we also are showcasing students within the city school district to do like step performances. So it also not only gives the students a platform to showcase their talents, it gives the students that have been working hard a reward to, you know, a reward of, you know, trying hard in school and showing up to school. So as long as like we have the ability to do so, if we can create these outlets for kids, I think that's what it's really all about, and trying to get Rochester back to a place where it used to be, you know?
Yeah. And I feel like with you guys also being a small company too, the fact that you're able to focus on like maybe one particular kid or like a group of kids is like, that's much more beneficial than going to the major corporations, because 9 times out of 10, I've seen a whole bunch of interns in a particular building, and it's kind of like, oh, so what are you doing today? You know, same as yesterday. Oh, did you meet anyone? No, you know, they just have me doing A, B, and C. It's like, all right.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, if they go over to a WDKX, for example, right? There's an opportunity to like, hey, like, there's this sales force that you can get into. Exactly. Oh, hey, you want to learn how to run the boards? We can do this too. Hey, we may or may not have some interviews. Do you want to help out with this?
Yeah.
And
we
it's
make
a lot
our
more.
interns do everything. Yeah. Like literally everything. And that's the other thing too, is like for our interns, and that's, I was like, it was so interesting to me because I felt like, I don't know if I was at an advantage or disadvantage that I only worked for my family's businesses growing up, because then when I went to a major corporation, I was like, what the hell? Like, we ain't doing nothing around here. Like, I was like, I'm bored. Like, I was like, can I do this? Can I do this? And they're like, no, you can sit here and fill these promo boxes up with giveaways. I'm like, all right, well, okay. And like for us, like our interns, like it's not that we even want them to learn everything about radio and business. We want to set them and give them the tools to succeed for their next point in life. Like we had one of our interns, she's one of the producers on Good Morning America.
Wow.
Like, and even Wendy Williams, she started at DKX. She didn't last very long, but she, you know, like we've had so many people like come through our doors, and it's not that we just want to like keep them around. We want to give people the tools to like really succeed. And I felt when I worked at a major corporation, I didn't learn a goddamn thing. Like if I was to have that job and to go out and like be in a position of management, I would have failed. Because I didn't feel like I was given any tools whatsoever. But like at our business, we like literally sit you down, come to these sales meetings, come sit in production, come learn about accounting. Like you need to learn this at 17, 18 years old. Because when you go out into the real world, that's what you're going to be expected to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
I mean, you're right.
It's hard. And it just feels like the system is so backwards sometimes.
Well, because I feel like when the system's already set, they're like, okay, here's the layout that you need to do. This is what we feel like is already going to work, right? And there's no room for creativity or flexibility. Because let's be honest, the major corporations are ran by maybe 3 white guys,
Literally.
4 white guys, right?
And they're old, too.
And they're hella old. But with the movement that we're going in right now in terms of like technology and like the youth just having so much creativity, it's like, why don't we just foster that? Why don't we tap into that? Because right now, every major radio station, they're trying to figure out, okay, well, how can we go digital? How can we make ourselves more appealing to the digital realm? It's like, well, everyone was appealing digitally like 10 years ago. You're kind of late on that ball.
Late. And my whole thing with radio, too, is it's like, you don't got to reinvent the wheel. If 96% of Americans are listening to radio, then just stick to what you know.
Stick to it, yeah.
Like, there's an audience there. Don't try, like, just stick to where you are. You already messed up this industry. You just might as well sit in your shit at this point.
Yeah. Well, that's why it was crazy, because a lot of people ask me, like, do you think radio's dying? And initially, maybe a couple years ago, my answer was yes.
Yeah.
But being able to be on air and, you know, just spinning and playing other people's music whenever I get the opportunity, I see how effective it is for, not on a major scale, but for the small communities.
Yeah. Oh, my God,
if you play one person's song who's from, like, an entire population of, like, maybe 1,000 people, you get 1,000 people who just, like, genuinely fuck with that now. And it's like, yo, it's just small wins everywhere. But I think radio just tries to grab the masses now to the point where your plate is just too full. You can't have every single thing on there.
And this is actually, it's funny because this is what I was telling my staff about 2 years ago, is because everybody was on this like trend of globalization. Like, we got to reach everybody. We got to, and it's like, no, what's really gonna make radio stay around forever is like local, keeping it hyper local, and talking exactly to that person, like driving home from work that just had the worst day ever, and it's like, don't worry, I got this song for you, and it's like making those people's days. That's what creating those connections, creating that relationship with your listening audience is what's gonna make radio last. And also, I mean, we are very blessed. We cannot even deny that we're blessed that we're able to pay $12.99 a month for a music subscription. Majority of America cannot afford to do that. Majority of America cannot.
That's why, especially
majority of America are making less than $30,000 a year. We have to be cognizant of that, because so often people are like, well, radio's not going to last because we have Spotify. Well, I'm sorry, y'all on Spotify, but we have this, we have that, we have this. But not everybody can afford all those subscriptions.
But that's why even more so when it comes to the free things like radio, it's that much more important for the PDs and the personalities to not only convey information correctly, but be able to relate to the people more. So it does. So you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yes.
So it doesn't make sense to me when, for instance, like, shout out Bootleg Kev. I love Kev. But it's like when you take somebody from like Arizona, put them in a realm of California, Los Angeles, it's like there's already a disconnect there.
Right.
Because that person hasn't been here for the majority of their life.
Right.
But when you have somebody like a DJ Head who, I know him, like, people are more likely to gravitate toward that because it's like, I grew up with him and I know him.
But, I don't even think I mind, like, our personalities coming from different markets. But it's like, one, make sure you keep your ego in check. And two, make sure you develop that relationship with the community. Yeah. Because I feel like sometimes what I see with air personalities is they be coming in and they're like, oh, I'm the shit now. Da-da-da-da. It's like, nah, it's not about you, honey. It's not about you. It's about the people you're talking to. Yeah. And, like, making sure you're fostering that relationship. Because if I don't know who you are, I'm tuning out. I'm like, can you just play the music already? So if there's no, like, connection there with your listening audience, it's like, why are you even here? Why don't I just play a digital, like, I can just have a computer say what song is coming up next. Why do I need you? Yeah. What are you bringing to the table?
Yeah. And I think the personalities, at some point they actually need to put their personality onto the table. But the struggle comes with a lot of the major corporations wanting to be like, well, we understand your personality, but you also have a laundry list of, like, promotional stuff that you need to talk about. And I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for saying all this, but you know what I mean? Like, and it's kind of sad because I remember back when I was in San Francisco, my favorite station of all time, 106 KMEL. I used to listen to Chuy Gomez in the morning. He'd be like the funniest motherfucker on the radio, just talking about like, hola, my name is Carmen. Like little bits. Oh my God, like, Carmen, yeah.
I love Carmen. Yeah, so I went to school in Philly and they played Carmen on the radio.
Oh my God, that's fucking crazy.
I love Carmen.
Yo, I didn't even know she made that way to Philly.
She made it to Philly, honey. Yo, wow. I used to love those prank calls. People be so tight. If you have not heard Carmen, y'all, like, please look. Oh my God, look her up. Her prank calls would be so funny. People would get so uncomfortable. Like, that shit is hilarious.
Yo, like, I didn't hear shit like that. I'm like, yo, this is what radio is,
It's what it's about. And, like, radio, like, you can be so creative with radio. And that's where, like, I get so frustrated with air personalities in general. It's like, you were literally given... Radio was like the internet before it was the internet. Like, you could create sketches, and like, we used to have some of our air personalities when I was a little girl. I was like 7 or 8. They would do spoofs of songs, like Destiny's Child, Bills. Like, our DJs would like redo the songs with their own lyrics, and I'm like, yes, like, this is the content that I want to hear. Like, this is hilarious. It should be fun. Like, the sketches and everything, all the things people are doing on Instagram, people were doing on radio 30 years ago, just without the video portion of it.
Well, just imagine, like, we remember stuff like Carmen, you remember stuff like that. Can you imagine, like, how much more effective that stuff is? Because nowadays we go through so much media and we forget about it the next day. But something as far back as then that wasn't even on video, we still remember.
We remember. And that's like what I get, like, we have quotas and stuff to make, and we have to play a certain amount of songs an hour, but it's like, let's bring back the fun and creative part of radio. I feel like sometimes people are afraid to be creative, though, because they don't know how it's going to be received. I think the social media thing has kind of, like, fucked us up in the sense that we need that instant gratification. Yeah. And, like, if you don't get that response from people, you feel like you just didn't do well. But sometimes it takes people a little time to like get used to hearing stuff. And it's like, don't just stop because nobody responded to it. Like, keep creating. Like what where would they have been if they didn't create a character like Carmen?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, why not take that risk and have fun? Like, radio allows you to just, and nobody even sees you. That's like the best part of radio. You could do voices, you could do songs, you could say anything, and then nobody even has to know that it's you.
But see, the difficult part with that nowadays is the fact that, like, even the program directors want you to be on social media, and they encourage that. So, no, they not only encourage that, but they kind of, like, you know,
make you.
Force it down your throat type of shit, right?
Literally.
So it's like, the third wall of the Carmen cannot be perceived, like, that can't be Chuy Gomez anymore. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it would be cool to like make it a cartoon, but yeah, I totally get it. And I like, you know, I'm on social media and like I have I have a difficult relationship with it, but I just don't even understand like the point of businesses having social media. Like, what is the point? You're not making money from it. What is the point of doing it?
I mean, I think independent influencers, if you may, like, do make money off of it, but
as a brand, like, what is the point? As a radio station, what is the point of having social media? Why do you need people to follow you on social media when they're already listening? Nielsen doesn't care about how many people you have following you on Instagram. That's not what makes your ratings. That's not what gets you clients. Why do we have to have social media? But like, what is the point? I don't get it. But people see so much value in it. Like, and it's all made up. Like, it's all made up. Like, why do people see so much value in social media? They're like, oh, you have 20,000 followers? Like, can you post this and I'll give you $100? Are you serious? You're about to give me $100 to post this shit right now? You're dumb. Okay, sure.
But I think...
Sure.
But I think the influencers see how easy it is to manipulate the bigger, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, well, we're just going to take your money because you're dumb enough to pay us for it.
Exactly. And it's just so backwards. For me, I feel like, especially for like radio, like, why do you need a separate platform? To me, it just doesn't make sense. Like, I just feel like they just put way too much.
No, I see like social media is kind of like you're selling spots.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're basically selling your spot and it's like a one-time post, but then the one up that I think social media has above like a radio spot is the fact that it's always there and you can pull it up anytime.
That's also not the best thing either.
I mean, yeah, it's really not, but it's like if you compare the two, I think, like, let's say if I'm like a program director, I would personally want to pay somebody on social media a little bit more dough than having them read a spot that's realistically nobody's going to hear or really pay attention to. Because at the end of the day...
See, that's where your lack of creativity is, like, you know what I mean? Like, people will remember a spot if it's catchy. If it's catchy and memorable. Do your damn job. Be creative. Have fun with it. I feel like it's the opposite for me. If I hear something, it'll resonate with me more than when I'm scrolling. Because I will literally just be on my phone like this, scrolling all day, and I won't even remember anything that I looked at. Like, my brain is an autopilot at that point. So, like, I really can't justify the weight that they put on social media. I think it's like we said before, you have a lot of old people trying to like, oh, like, what are the kids into? Like, let's try to figure this out. And it's not really resonating.
So then does WDKX like even have a social media?
Yes, I do social media. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. When I was in college, my whole minor was digital marketing.
Okay.
And I told them, I was like, this is like the next wave, social media. Like, we got to get a Facebook, we got to get a Twitter. There's this new thing called Instagram coming out. Like, I think we need to like be on all fronts. I got our Facebook page up to like 60,000. I got our Twitter up to 25. I got our Instagram up to 11. And I was like, well, now what? What do I do now?
Yeah.
What is the point of this?
It's a popularity contest.
It's a popularity
contest.
You
know what I mean? And we see WDKX, for example. Like, you know, a normal consumer would see WDKX, and then they would see, like, let's say something from iHeart, right?
Right.
Well, which one has more followers? Let's say the iHeart one, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, they must have a little bit more credibility.
Yeah,
they,
but look at their Cume. Look at their demo. Look at their ratings.
Yeah.
That's like, and that's like where I run into, because I do sales too, and I'm like, bruh. We have Triple Crown. We're number one 1834. We're number one 12 plus. We're number one. What else? We're number one in 2554.
Damn.
What does it matter about the social media.
Well,
I really don't understand.
But it goes back to what you were saying with the fact that, like, if you're a radio station, you just operate as a radio station, and you just do everything that a radio station is supposed to in order to win.
Right.
And that's why I'm already respecting that, because it's like, yo, like, fuck the social media shit. We're already doing good in our own realm.
But see, the rules change constantly, and I think especially for being a Black-owned station, when it came to sales, they would be like, well, we can't give you the same rate as these people because you're not number one. Okay, so we'll be number one then. Now we're number one. Give us the rate. Oh, well, what's your social media following? Well, what's the social media following got to do with the thing? Sure. Okay, now we got 60,000 followers. Now what do you want us to do? So it's like, for me, I just feel like it's such like a, what is it? What is the word? Like a pony and... Yeah, like there's always another hurdle that you have to overcome when it's like they keep changing the rules, because it's like if we're doing good radio, we're doing good things for the community. And then we got the social media popping too. What else do you want from us?
Well, do you think it's a Black thing?
Well, they say don't play the race card, but I think that has a big part to do with it. I feel like a lot of times people don't respect our audience as much as they should. They don't respect our buying power. They don't respect us as individuals or our community and what value we carry. And I think that plays a big part into, you look at the country stations compared to urban. And this is just across the board. Yeah. I think it's harder for urban stations to sell in comparison to other formats because of who the listening audience is, because of the preconceived notion that people have.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that has a big part in it. And I think, it's all about rewriting the narrative and, making sure that we continue to have the events that we do that showcase our audience in a better light than what media has portrayed them in for the last few decades, from the entire history of America. And it's like showcasing these bright young students that are on their way to becoming potential consumers for you. Why not? Why wouldn't you want to market or advertise towards them? Mm-hmm. You don't see value in them either, but you can see value in the kids who live out in Pittsburgh. Oh, you don't know what that is. It's like the suburbs versus the city.
Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
Beverly Hills
For
versus
sure.
like Crenshaw.
But there's,
which is like there's still
more
value in the people.
Yeah, and there's more people in the cities than the suburbs.
Hello.
So like, tap into that market.
Why not?
If you really want to talk about numbers, tap into the cities.
Exactly. And then, you see like there's all this these changes happening within the cities as well. Like you have a lot of like the gentrification, which I'm not entirely happy about. But you see people like even migrating more towards the cities and then really engaging with the cultures of the city too. So it's like you can't necessarily pigeonhole urban listeners, because urban listeners have transformed in the last 30 years. It's gone from being just Black to now white people listen to urban music, Hispanics, Asians. It's like you need to change how your perception of what that
urban
means to you. It's changing.
Because the urban music's in the suburbs now.
It sure is, honey. It sure is.
Dude, I'll tell you this, right? I was doing a gig over in the OC. I'm talking about I had to go through a gate. After I went through the gate, there was one of those like drop-offs, right? I went through that too. Pull up to this mansion, right? There's a pool right behind me. There's like spiral stairs going upwards.
Yes.
Whole bunch of white people.
I'm sure.
Hey, so what do y'all want to hear? Man, you got some Young Thug. You got some Lil Wayne. I'm just like, hey, man, look, you're going to make it super easy on me because this is the shit I kick already.
Right.
And they were just like going up on it. I'm like, yo, like, and a couple years ago, that's probably something that would have been so unheard of.
Hell yeah. I even remember, like, for me, like, growing up, like, my friends were all listening, like, Dave Matthews Band and, like, all that kind of, like, Fish and 311 and that kind of shit. And then, like, something changed. I don't know what happened, but something changed. And, like, all my friends, because I grew up in, I grew up in Brighton, so it's, like, majority Jewish and white. And then I don't know what happened around, like, 10th, 11th grade, everyone started listening to Black music, like, Black artists.
Kanye.
Yeah, Kanye. But there was even, like, the T-Pain days and, like...
Yeah.
I don't right.
Yeah.
I don't.
Shout out to the 2000s.
Right. There was a shift definitely, and it just like hasn't gone back. But even like when I think about it, because like I feel like we used to listen to like all different types of music when we were younger, but like there's not much else. There's not like Britney Spears. Or like even Ariana Grande is like very urban to me. Like she's not even very pop.
Well, she's getting there.
Yeah. So it's like there's not much else for people to listen to, like young kids, unless you're into, well, even the rock scene is not even as heavy as it used to be. Mm-hmm. You'd have to really just be into country. That's about it. Mm-hmm. And even with country, we killing that shit too. Like you heard,
shout out Lil Nas X,
right,
man.
Like I don't know. It's just been such a shift, and I think people have to change their perception of like who's listening to music now.
Yeah, well, I think it's when we have people like the Kanye West who make it okay for people in the suburbs to also do like hip hop, and then at the same time, this renaissance of social media where you see people like the Lil Pumps and the all the little white kids, right? You got the Bad Babies too. Yeah. It makes it that much more. It stems in people's heads like, okay, it must be easy to rap.
It really at this point, yes.
At this point, it really is.
Yeah.
But to be prominent is like a whole different thing. You can't make it past the 2-year mark anymore.
Yeah. No, seriously. I feel like it's been like a string of one-hit wonders for the last decade.
Yeah. I was actually just talking to my boy like in Ireland, shout out 220, and he was talking to me about our favorite albums of the year. And it's April right now when this podcast is recorded, and I'm just like, yo, to be honest, there's just been a shit ton of singles, but no like prominent album other than like Anderson .Paak
I was just gonna say that.
You know what I mean?
You know who also is dope that I was just listening to is Lizzo. I think you'll fuck with her heavy. She's so dope. She has a song called Soulmate and 'Cause I Love You. And her album, well, I'm also like a huge Prince fan, so anything that like reminds me of Prince, I'm like, oh my God, you're amazing. But she has like this like raw, unique, and you can tell like she went through each track and like handpicked them. Like
that's good.
It just sounds, I remember like you used to be able to like buy an album, didn't know what the hell was on it, but you would sit there and listen to the whole thing. And it's been a good 15 years since I've been able to do that. You know what I mean? But like, I feel like there are some really decent artists that are like popping up that are kind of bringing back the heart of music.
Who do you guys play on WDKX?
Oh, honey, we play everything. We play everything from Sam Cooke to Luther Vandross to Shaka Khan, and then you pop over to Young Thug. You can pop over to Nicki Minaj, Kanye West. Then we also play gospel on Sundays. So you got the Fred Hammond, you got the Kirk Franklin, and we, what else do we do? We play some jazz at night too. Then you got the Erykah Badu for anyone that likes the neo soul. We are a variety station. That's why it cracks me up when people are like, you playing the same song. I'm like,
no,
honey, you listen at the same time every day or something because.
So wait, how is like your hours formatted then? At that point, because that's kind of...
It's all over the place. It's funny because, so like my dad and, I call him my uncle because he's been around my whole life, but they programmed the station together. And it's literally like, this is why like I changed like the whole marketing behind the station. It's like you're listening to my playlist because it's like you're listening to what we want to hear. There's no really rhyme or reason behind it, I could say.
Wow.
Other than like we want it to feel good when you're listening. So...
And at the same time, your ratings are up.
Honey. You know, it works. You know.
I love it.
You know, when you're walking in the path of God, he just makes the way for you. But we'll play something. We'll play like a Prince, and then we'll go to Bruno Mars. And then we'll go. It's like it's a station that the whole family can sit to and listen together. Like not only because you know, like when you talk to your parents or even your grandparents, like, oh, I want to hear this young shit. I want to.
Yeah.
And like we help bridge the gap. So even like with like the 21 Savage song, help me out real quick.
A lot.
Like we put that on with the fuzz. So like, you know what I mean? Like because that's where the sample comes from. The sample comes from the I Love You for All Seasons. So it's like, why not? We're bridging generations. That's what the station's all about. It goes from, you know, I want to be, me and my dad sit and talk about music. I want people to do that with their parents too.
Yeah.
So like, if I like the 21 Savage song and my dad's like, oh, hold on. I used to do this. I used to mix this song when I was a DJ back at Michigan State. And I'm like, oh, like,
That's where it came from. At the same time, too, honestly, and this is why I love DJing, it's education.
Hello.
It's straight up education.
Yeah.
If you didn't know, hip-hop takes from a whole bunch of other shit and then makes it hip-hop. But the fact that, like, we don't have the opportunity to go back and, like, know where these samples come from, or people just don't care.
Yeah.
But you're the platform that's like, hey, like, this is actually where this came from. You should care, like, where this came from because it's an ongoing thing in history. 10 years from now, they're probably going to sample the same shit.
Yeah. And it's crazy, like, in hip-hop in, like, the 90s, people really started, like, sampling a lot of stuff more often. but I think like people stopped caring about like where the music was coming from. Like for me, because I'm a little bit of a snob, I guess. Like I miss there being instruments in radio or in music. I'm sorry, and because
like live instruments,
because like you were getting all the stuff from like the 70s. Like you would get that funk, you get that deep bass, like like so it made you just feel like you're stanky. You know what I mean? Like you would hear that shit all the time.
I love your face.
And then like and then it like kind of transitioned where you would take that even like that zap and you would hear it in like a Tupac song, and it would kind of like blend it in with more of like more of like the electronic kind of like the drums on top of it, so it kind of loses its funkiness, but you can still hear like the bass in it a little bit, and you kind of like got away from the heart for me of music. I feel like the heart of music comes from like artists being able to be freely creative with their instruments, and then it blends together with a vocalist and a songwriter, and that's what makes music beautiful. So like for us, we feel like we don't want to lose the history of where music comes from. You can't know where you're going unless you know where you came from. So having that understanding of like even the Nat King Coles up to like the Bootsy Collins and then to the Tupacs, and like we want to make sure that we're bridging. People have been listening to us since 74. You know what I mean? So like we want to not only like keep them around, but we want to keep their kids around and their kids around and their cousins and their families. We want to show that like we're all not that far removed. We all listening to the same thing at its core. We just are calling it different things at this point. So, and that's how like I feel like our programming has been able to work so well, is because we kind of just do what we want to do, and it works. Yeah,
and then you said you were bridging like what 18 through 24, and then like the older crowd too.
Yeah,
and that alone proves your entire point. Because you're getting people from like the old school talking about like, yo, we used to play this. Oh, but here's the more updated version.
Exactly. And even like my dad, he still has his show. You should listen in on Saturdays because we're live on WDKX.com. We have people listening from all over the world.
Oh, shit, crazy. Okay.
Like all the time. So my dad's show, it goes from like 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. And it has all the oldies. Like anything and everything you could think of. We got like the stacks, like the BB King, like all like the real like bluesy feel, and then we got the jazzy stuff, and then you got the disco and his show is kind of like what helps teach people about the music, because my dad was a DJ. Fun fact about my dad, he went to Michigan State, roomed with Magic Johnson, and they started a DJ company together and like threw parties all around Lansing, and like like mad random, right? So weird.
That's crazy.
So like my dad's like he loves music, so he wants to teach people about it, and yeah, as long as we're so passionate about the music and the community, we ain't going nowhere.
Do you ever think that WDKX will expand outside of Rochester?
No, I don't see the point. I feel like people always are like, and I guess this is me, like maybe I need to think bigger, but like why? I think that's where like companies start kind of turning ugly, and you kind of like lose the heart of a company. It's because they're like, let's get bigger, let's do this, and it's like, why don't you just focus on where you at right now?
Like we're big enough.
Right, not even that we're big enough. There's always room for growth, but like why? Like what is the point of that? I think that comes from like the whole globalization, like ideology that people have been pushing for the last couple decades, where you're starting to see like, okay, then you have these multi-billion-dollar corporations that are in debt there because they're spreading themselves too thin, and like, is it really working for you? Let's be real. So like for me, I feel like our heart is in Rochester, and I feel like we should stay in Rochester. There's horizontal integration that you can do beyond just radio, of course. And I'm gonna save that for another time when I can talk about it. But yeah, I don't really, for me personally, I don't see the point of doing that. I think it's silly. I think I'm so jaded from like all the stuff that Bill Clinton did in the 90s, from like just destroying the radio industry and like creating all these monopolies within the industry. I think it's so much more important of having that homegrown station that really is about where it came from.
Andria Langston, everybody. I was like, through that past minute, I was like, this is a perfect way to end it.
Yeah.
Andria, where can everybody find you and the station at?
On WDKX.com. You can listen to us live 24/7 from anywhere in the world. feel free to follow us on social media if you're into that kind of stuff. And you can follow me too on Instagram. It's Mitochondria, MIITOCHANDRIA.
I'm really happy to have you. And shout out to Angie Says for putting this together,
yes,
man.
Angie.
This was an amazing
my
podcast.
Rock girl.
Hop on in.
Yes,
show your face.
Come show your face, my beautiful girl.
This is the lunch table. Food for thought. I'm Nico Blitz. WDKX. Andria Langston. We're out, everybody. Yay!